Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome yet again to another episode of Lunch Guide. My name is Chef Andy, your regular host, and today I'm going to be making something so interesting for you all to learn. We're going to be making a mutton biryani, which is one among the many dishes which we'll be showcasing on this particular season, which revolve around the 10 ways with rice. So without further ado, I'll begin by introducing what we'll be working with today, and we're just going to go in and start everything else. So I'll start right at the very front where we have some beautiful jasmine rice. I've also got some minced ginger. I've also got one ginger root there. And then we're also going to be working with 2 onions, red and white. You'll also create room for some star aniseed, a bit of garlic, a bit of garam masala, some cardamom pods, some star aniseed, some black peppercorns. You'll also need some pureed papaya. You'll also need some beautiful saffron for coloring, both that and some turmeric or some orange food color or egg yellow food color can also do. You'll also need some minced garlic, some cumin powder there, some curry paste, a bit of some black pepper, and last but not least, a bit of some cumin powder. So that's just the array of spices we'll be working with. You will also need about 250 grams of some uncut mutton, probably from the leg, and 1 lemon, 2 tomatoes there. You'll also need a bit of milk for infusing, and last but not least, a bit of water, which will aid you in cooking your rice. So we're going to take a short break now, give you a bit of time to stretch out and get ready for the show. And for those of you who are going to be taking notes for this particular recipe, this is your chance to grab your pens and papers. So do not touch that dial. We'll be back in a short while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just joining us, we're just about to start the preparation of a very, very local and beautiful dish among the dishes that we're going to be airing around the 10 ways with rice for this particular season, and we're just about to start. For those of you who just missed on the introduction as well, we did also mention that we are going on Facebook at 1 o'clock every particular episode, so please do not miss out to watch that. So we're going to actually just start off this process very, very simply. And the first particular step is soaking your rice. So this is particularly important because it's one of the key elements of making the rice really, really nice and fluffy, and it is going to need quite a bit of time. So before you actually start working on everything else, this is a very, very handy step to actually start with. So for that, you'll need just some regular temperature water and about half a cup of uncooked jasmine rice. So add that to any bowl you particularly have and just add water, making sure to fill up just about 3 parts of water to the rice. So give it quite a bit of water, and you can actually now allow that to sit for about 20 minutes, and you're going to actually steam that a little later. And also very importantly, very important to have a good pot for cooking your rice in. So very, very importantly, always use the same container you measured out your rice with. It always gives you a nicer, perfect ratio. So I'm actually just going to measure out 2 parts of water, which is exactly 2 parts of the same water it's 2 parts of the content we're going to be using for the rice. All you're going to do is reserve that for later, so give that a bit of time before you actually proceed to reheat. And all you're going to do next up is grab another pot, and you're going to proceed to start heating. So start off with your temperature really, really low, and just give it a bit of time to heat up. Next up, just start with a bit of some cooking oil. Vegetable oil or canola oil is a very, very good option for this dish. And remember, you don't really want to add too much oil because you are going to be working with mutton, which is quite, it actually quite is a very, very, very fatty kind of meat. So very, very importantly to remember, Try to put only enough oil just for the meat to not stick onto your pan, but not too much to drench your meat inside. So very, very simply, we're going to go into the next step, which is basically the marination of the meat. And while we allow that to heat up, we're just going to start by trimming our meat really quickly. So you'll need a very, very sharp knife for that. And all you will begin to do is start by working right around your meat, making sure to begin by trimming all that fat. And you can actually just proceed to set that aside, and now proceed to just cut your meat into some nice chunky cubes, about 1-inch cubes in size. And always remember to also leave a bit of meat on the bone. It's always nice and handy to throw that bone in there. Remember, the bone marrow actually contains quite a bit of flavor, so it's very important to not actually cut the bone out of this particular recipe. And all you're going to do now is proceed to cube all your meat, and repeating the same thing for your second piece of chop. And also very, very important to remember, always try and spare quite a bit of meat while you actually do your trimming. Always try and reduce the amount of waste as much as possible. Remember, you don't really want to lose out on all that beautiful meat. And once that's trimmed out, proceed to also cube that into some nice chunky sizes. Right, and once all that's cubed up, just proceed to add that into your hot pan. And proceed to discard the rest. Very importantly also to always remember to rinse your hands when working with meat, especially raw meat. So very, very importantly, a nice, very simple technique I like to use myself. Just replace your knife if you have one, or just rinse it under the tap, and just proceed to turn your board around, and you have a nice, beautiful, cleaner surface to work on. So you're actually now going to turn your heat up to about medium and proceed to mix everything together. And what you're doing particularly at this stage is basically allowing your meat to really brown. So you're going to actually allow that a few minutes to really just cook and brown. And very important also to continue mixing through. Right, so you want to give that a few seconds to just continue to brown on high heat. And while that proceeds, you can actually take the chance now to just continue to prepare most of your other condiments. So start with your onion. Very, very important to chop it as fine as you possibly can. So cut some slits right through the sides and ones through the middle, and just proceed to chop that finely. Once you get to the edge, turn it flat and finish to chop that off. And just proceed to do the same thing for the rest of your onion. So why I'm particularly using 2 onions for this particular recipe is you do actually get a nice buttery feel from the white onion, and you do get the pungency from the red onion, which really constitutes for very, very beautiful flavor in general. So if you actually have the chance to use even any more onions that you may have in your pantry, you're very much allowed to. Just proceed to finish chopping everything up. And one particular technique I learned through making biryani is it's always a little harder to follow the very traditional recipe of biryani, but there's always a little easier ways to do it, and I'm actually going to try and make it as simple as I can, even as a chef, for all of you to be able to learn it and be able to do something similarly simple even at home. And remember, the essence of actually learning to do it at home is actually to just be able to come up with something very similar to what you'd actually expect at a restaurant, but of course always doing it with a nicer, easier, friendlier budget, as opposed to the many difficult dishes that you may actually pay for all the way in those restaurants out there. Okay, so your mutton is now nicely browned up. Proceed to just grab a bowl and just easily just lift those into a bowl and begin to allow those to cool off. Very important that you tilt your pan while doing so. This actually helps you really drain quite a bit of that oil. So just take your time doing that. Try to make sure to leave as much oil in the pan as you possibly can. Right, and all you need to do now is begin to reheat the same pan. Always reserve the same oil. It does contain quite a bit of flavor. And you're going to proceed by adding your onions. And also very handy to actually have one of these at home. They actually really come in handy when you're actually looking at breaking some or really crushing some raw spices. But if you don't actually have one of this, you can easily just use the side of your knife against your board and just bash it over the top, and it will actually help you to just break those pods and allow you to get a bit of that flavor out. So I'm just going to proceed to add some cardamom pods in there, a bit of some black peppercorns and some star aniseed, and a bit of some cloves. And I'm just going to proceed to just lightly crush those up. Remember, the essence in getting flavor from those raw spices is actually when you actually pound them up a bit. Right, easy as that. Pour that into your pan. And using your spoon, proceed to mix everything together. At this stage, add a little bit of water. Just allow your pan to cool off while actually allowing you to really get those spices to infuse in there. And now you can turn your pan to as high of a heat as you possibly can. Just give your onions about 3 to 4 minutes to continue sweating out. And you can now proceed to add some of your other ingredients. We're going to also be using some garlic cloves there, so I'm just going to proceed to just peel those really quickly. Right, so once those are peeled, just proceed to chop those really coarsely. Right, once your garlic is now chopped up, proceed to add your garlic into your pot. Also proceed to add 1 heaped teaspoon of some minced ginger. You can make it actually 1.5. Finely chopped ginger will also work for this particular recipe. And now just proceed to mix everything together. Well, of course, taking your time to make sure to completely evaporate the liquid. And we're now going to proceed to add some of our other ingredients. So to start that off, we're going to start off with some tomato paste, about 2 tablespoons. And then we're also going to add in some garam masala, some cumin powder, and some chaat masala. And just proceed now to mix everything together. Now at this stage you can actually now proceed to now add in your meat. And proceed to mix everything together. And now just give that a bit of time for the flavors to really combine, and this is very important to particularly do so before adding any liquid to at this particular stage, because it really actually helps you to activate the flavors in your spices. Right, and now while that proceeds, just proceed to grab your tomatoes and proceed to cut them into quarters. And now begin to cut your quarters into halves. Proceed to add that into your pot. And very important at this stage to actually proceed to mix everything together continuously. This will actually allow you to also break your tomatoes down a little quicker. I'm just going to grab some kitchen paper there. Right, so just proceed to mix everything together. And now at this stage you can now proceed to add some liquid in there. And proceed to just add just until the water almost touches the topmost surface of your mixture. And the last and final ingredient, a bit of some lemon. You can actually find these in a lot of your retail outlets. But if you can't be able to find this, you can actually use some limes or some local lemon. It will actually not really give it much of a difference. So I'm just going to proceed to, first of all, just peel a nice thin layer off the lemon there. And I'll just do this, turn it around and do the same for the other side. And all you need to do at this stage is place your lemon onto your chopping board with the skin side on the bottom and proceed to remove that white piece of rind on the inside of the lemon. Of course, being very, very careful not to cut yourself. And proceed to slice as much of that white layer as you possibly can. Remember, it is the rind and it is very, very bitter if you add it to food. But if you take that bit of white skin off and add the lemon rind to your biryani mix, it will actually really bring up the flavors. So just proceed to do the same for the next piece. And you should actually be able to almost see right through to the skin at this stage. All you need to do now is proceed to chop that very finely. And proceed to add that into your pot. Also very important, always a very key handy tip, always just remember to always give your lemon a bit of a squeeze on the surface of your table. That actually always allows you to get a bit of that juice, that extra juice from your lemon. And proceed to cut right through the middle. And while holding a small sieve or any particular size of sieve over your pot, proceed to squeeze your lemon in there. Of course, allowing only the juice to go through and discarding the skin and the seeds. Alright, so proceed to discard everything else. And now, very importantly, proceed to give your biryani one final mix through. And now proceed to just put a lid over your pot and just allow that to really steam up and really combine in the flavors. Remember, you're actually going to now at this stage turn your temperature a little lower. Allow your biryani mixture to continue cooking for anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes and then remove the lid and allow it to continue evaporating the liquid slowly. So we're just going to turn the pots around now and we're just going to allow that to proceed on the other end. And next up, we're going to start heating up some water where we're going to be cooking our rice in. So of course, very importantly, start by heating your water. We're just going to clear up that mess. Right, so next up, proceed to grab your rice. And you will actually need about 2 bowls for this particular technique. So very easily grab another strainer that you may have and basically just put that over the bowl on the side here. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to rinse your rice. So as I mentioned, very importantly, it's very particular that you actually soak your biryani rice before you actually cook it. So I'm just going to proceed to rinse that in my hands. Of course, you will also always remember that it is very crucial to wash your rice before you cook it. And for this particular reason, I'm actually using the clear bowl so that I can actually take you through the process of seeing the differences as you continue to clean your rice. So as you can see, the water is now a little murky, so we are going to proceed to just pour that out. And we're now going to proceed to add some more water to the bowl and continue to rinse the rice. Of course, very importantly, just taking quite a bit of time to do so. Take it through the second rinse and once more pour your water out. And all you need to do at this stage is now pour your rice onto the sieve and just proceed to allow your rice to drain. And I like this particular technique of making rice because it always works very well, especially when you're looking for some nice fluffy rice. And one thing it actually avoids is getting that bit of that chewy rice that we actually most of the time expect out of every meal. So this is actually going to fluff up really well, and it actually also allows it to really absorb the flavors once you mix it with your biryani a little later. So we're going to proceed to add a few key ingredients to our water, and that will be, for one, a star anise, just 1 piece. I'm also going to be adding 2 pieces of bay leaf. And all we're going to do is just allow that to just simmer for just a little bit for the water and the seasoning and the bay leaf and the star anise to just infuse. And very importantly, you can never also forget to work without some salt. So just a small pinch of salt for seasoning. And now all you need to do is proceed to shake your rice right over the bowl, making sure that there's not any water coming through the bottom. And then proceed to pour that into your water. And proceed to use a small spoon or a large spoon and just give it a mix. Right, so as soon as that's done, I particularly like to add a last and final ingredient that really gives that rice quite a bit of richness, and which is just some regular milk. So I'm just going to add about half a cup of milk in there. And all we need to do now is just give that a bit of time to cook. And we're basically now going to take a break and just come back a little later, where I'm going to show you the last and final process of combining your biryani. But before we do so, I will actually ask you to do bear with us. We are going to take a short break, but do not touch that dial. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just tuning in with us, we've been working on a very, very beautiful, simple biryani dish, and we're just about at the last and final stage, and we're just about to finish that off. But very, very traditionally, as you know, a biryani is not a biryani with a bit of some color to it. So for that, I'll be using some 2 different food colors here, and I'll proceed to just dilute the 2 of them with a bit of milk. And I'll just very simply proceed to mix that together. All right, simple as that. And very, very simply, all I'll begin to do is add one of the food colors to one side of the pot and turn it around and add a bit of the rest to the other side. So remember, as I said, I'm actually working with a bit of some turmeric and a bit of some saffron, but some good alternatives that you can actually use for that particular technique. You can actually work with some red food color if you can find some. Alternative to yellow food color, you can work with turmeric. And even if you can't be able to find the 2 food colors, there's so many other different generic food colors out there. So do actually do some research. You will actually find out there's so much more you can actually improvise with. So I'm just going to allow that to steam just for a little bit. This is just to aid in just getting those colors together. And then I'm just going to take the lid off. And all we're going to do now is just allow that to just steam up and just allow the water to completely disappear. And now next up, I'm going to proceed to open up our biryani mixed meat, that is our mutton, which is now ready. We're now just going to proceed to give that a quick mix. All right, simple as that. We're now just going to just give our rice just a few seconds to finish steaming up. And while that continues, we're just going to proceed to grab a plate here. Right, so your rice is now just starting to dry out. We're just going to lower the temperature now. And once it just starts to really lighten up, we're just going to proceed to fluff that up a little bit. simple as that. And now I'm just going to turn the pots over and return the biryani onto the heat, but at very, very low heat. And very simply, using a spoon, big spoon or a ladle, I'm just going to proceed to layer the rice right over the biryani. You can now proceed to just spread that right over the top like that. Of course, making sure to spread it out right over the surface of your meat. Right, so very simply just return the lid onto that pot. Just give it a few more seconds just to really just combine with the flavor. So it's a very, very easy and quick recipe, as I mentioned, and it is one that you can actually be able to do even in the shortest time, even for lunch. And some key techniques you can also use for this particular stage. You can actually also marinate your mutton in advance and then proceed to just add all the ingredients we cooked in with it. But always remember to cook your spices and your onions first. Mix that with your meat and then allow that to marinate overnight. And the following day you can actually just add some ghee or some oil into a cooking pot and proceed to fry it. Add some liquid to just give it a bit of sauce, just to really break down the meat and the tomatoes. And then basically just proceed to do the same thing we've done today. The rice, for instance, you can actually just cook the rice within just a short period of time before serving. And it's as simple as that. Just a bit of some food color with a bit of some milk in there. It will actually give it a nice, beautiful richness. So now this is now ready to serve. I'm just going to proceed to turn that off. And we're now going to take off the lid. And very, very simply with a spoon, we're just going to fluff up that mixture in there. Right, and all that's left to do is actually to plate. So I will just simply just grab a spoon and proceed to just scoop the mixture, of course going to the very bottom of your pot and scooping it straight onto your plate. Just always a nice presentation to finish off, a nice chunk of mutton right over the top like that. And a bit of those beautiful bay leaves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my very easy and quick to make version of a mutton biryani. I hope you've actually managed to learn something interesting on the show today, and you're actually going to take a chance with fate and actually try to make this yourselves at home. But from my end, I could only thank you so much for tuning in once more. And for those of you who are tuning in on Facebook Live, thank you so much as well. Until the next episode, where we're actually going to be bringing you some more different and beautiful techniques with rice, 10 ways. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and until the next episode, have a lovely evening and goodbye.